On behalf of the Council.
President, honourable members, tomorrow this House will be voting on the reports of Mr. Albrecht and Mr. Kourkoulas on the comprehensive data protection package which was proposed by the Commission in January 2012. This package comprises two legislative proposals. The first is a general data protection regulation which is intended to replace the 1995 directive. The second is a directive on the protection of individuals with regard to the processing of personal data by competent authorities for the purpose of prevention.
Il y a un problème de traduction, vous n'entendez pas?
Problem with translation
Vous n'avez
apparently.
pas le français?
Somebody not hearing the French?
Je peux parler en français?
Attendez, on va voir, voilà, on va recommencer.
No.
Reprenez la parole, s'il vous plaît, Monsieur le Ministre.
Have a go again, Minister.
Allez-y, je vous donne la parole.
Okay, back to you.
So I was saying that the directive, the second is a directive on the protection of individuals with regard to the processing of personal data by competent authorities for the purposes of prevention, investigation, detection or prosecution of criminal offences or the execution of criminal penalties, and the free movement of such data. This is intended to replace the 2008 Data Protection Framework Decision. The Council has welcomed these two proposals and has on several occasions publicly pledged its broad support for them. Like the Parliament, the Council is entirely convinced of the need to update and modernise the Union's data protection legislation in the light of the significant technological changes that have occurred since the adoption of the 1995 directive. Over the past 2 years, no other legislative file in the area of justice and home affairs area has been the subject of such intense discussions in the Council. In 2013 alone, almost 50 days of meetings of the relevant working groups were devoted to the discussion of these two proposals. And the Greek presidency had already devoted over 10 days of meetings of the Working Party to this package. However, there is no hiding the fact that the Council has not been able to make as much progress as you have done. And I am aware that this is a source of some frustration, as the honourable member, Mr. Kourkoulas, just mentioned. The Commission chose to propose a regulation rather than a directive to replace the current 95 directive. The Commission had good reasons why it made this choice. I am well aware that the Parliament is also in favour of the increased harmonisation which could be brought by the regulation. The discussion on the regulation is very work intensive. This is the biggest, most ambitious piece of draft legislation in the justice area during the term of this Parliament, covering all companies, public authorities and individuals in the EU. This implies detailed scrutiny by 28 Member States. This shows the great interest of Member States, which have detailed consultations at home with several ministries involved. Experts from all 28 Member States are working to ensure that the result of the negotiation is a high-quality legislative instrument. Furthermore, data protection is a cross-cutting issue which touches on almost every area of life and society. This means that the implementation of the 95 directive affects almost every area of society and a large number of different legislative acts at the national level. The Greek presidency is committed to brokering this file, which is, as you know, a key element for both the individual rights and growth in the EU. This file is of crucial importance for the digital internal market, as highlighted by the European Council. I would like also to remind you the conclusions of the European Council October 2013 on digital economy regarding the timely adoption of a strong EU general data protection framework and the Cybersecurity Directive as essential for the completion of the digital single market by 2015. During the Justice and Home Affairs Council of last week, Member States confirmed their broad support on the territorial scope and the understanding on the key principles of international transfers, this is Chapter 5, in line with the position already expressed in the January informal meeting of ministers in Athens. Progress was also made on key provisions of Chapters 1 to 4, namely pseudonymation, portability of personal data, obligations of controllers and processors, as well as profiling. These are essential for the digital internal market. If on top of this you take into account some very specific provisions on data protection in the public sector, such as legislation on social benefits, pensions, youth welfare and public health, you will appreciate that this is an area of a very, very great complexity. Furthermore, these provisions are often intrinsically tied up with the institutional, administrative and even constitutional arrangements within each member state. Our aim is to have a high-quality legislative instrument which is able to protect the personal data of our citizens and which can be applied in all member states. I am confident that once our internal negotiation process is over, it will be possible for both our institutions to find common ground on these proposals and have the two instruments adopted. I would like to take this opportunity to support this Parliament's view that the data protection reform should also apply in the future to the EU institutions. Last June, Vice President Reding gave a commitment that the Commission would bring forward such a proposal. President, honourable members, I would like to assure you that the Council, like the Parliament, attaches considerable importance to this reform. I would like also to thank the Commission and personally Vice President Reding for her dedication and engagement in this file. The Hellenic Presidency will make every effort to contribute in finalising the negotiations between the Member States as soon as possible so that we could begin discussions with the Parliament. Thank you very much.
Kourkoulas, la parole est maintenant à Madame Reding.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Redding now has the floor.
Thank you, President. I would like first to say a personal word to the rapporteurs, to the shadow rapporteurs and to all their collaborators. You have been extraordinary during the last 2 years and in the preparatory years before. And I think that through your work you have really shown that the European Parliament is a strong voice for citizens and for the economic development and for the preservation of our common values. So thank you for having done that, and vous avez bien mérité de notre Europe. President, in May 2011, this House called for a reform of the European data protection rules. The Commission delivered the proposals requested by the Parliament in January 2012, a package as had been asked in the Parliament's resolution by your colleague Voss. Now it is time again for this House to act. Now it is the moment